The RBA isn't worried about inflation. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, and I've got some good news. You know how everything's getting more expensive? Food, meat got more expensive, petrol, even your drinks, everything's going up in price. Well, the RBA isn't worried about it, guys. They're not worried. It's all good. It's all good. They're not worried. Because, well, the inflation rate, CPI, is sitting at 1.1%. Now, I looked at getting a term deposit. So I've switched over to a super fund where I can pick and choose to a much greater extent. And what interest do you think they were going to offer me for, per annum for a 3-month term deposit, just to stick some cash away? How much? I'm going to have a shot of coffee, and you let me know. You guess what interest you think. Remember, CPI is 1.1. 0.22%. 0.22%. So don't worry, guys. Don't worry about CPI. The RBA isn't concerned. Now, it isn't a perfect measure, not by any length. And there's certain things that throw it out. Housing isn't accurately accounted for in the CPI, and you have this issue where housing requires a lot of sacrifice, a lot of savings, and that people are stashing money away to get into housing. So it just exacerbates the amount of money flowing in the economy and the liquidity in the economy. We also have the path of money going into housing, which is causing the candle-on effect, which refers to the change in relative prices resulting from a change in money supply. The change in relative prices occurs because the change in money supply is a specific injection point. Now, with our cash rate here in Australia being at 0.1%, because the RBA isn't worried about inflation, they're not going to worry about it for some time, I can't see it going up, everyone. It not going up. So let's have a look. The current inflation rate, as I said, 0.1%. This is when they introduced their target. They're a bit all over the place, aren't they, with their stepping in. Now, another thing you may have heard about is transitory inflation, particularly if you're following the US news. Powell, head of the Federal Reserve there, it's just transitory. You'll see it. Don't worry about it. It's to do with all of the supply issues. Now, that could honestly be part of it. We're seeing all these shipping costs surge, blow up to the moon. Every time I look at the Freightos index, every time it's higher. You know what? I'm gonna bring it up now just to have a look. Where is it? Where's the Freightos? Here we go. I've got it. Let's see how high it is. Come on. Whoa, there you go. Over $6,000, everyone. $6,173. Literally every time I look at this, it's getting more and more expensive. Wow. So hopefully it'll go down, because here in Australia we import so much. And you're seeing building materials are getting more expensive. You're getting shrinkflation everywhere. So how do you think these companies that have implemented shrinkflation will scale back up in size? I mean, I'm sure they would for marketing purposes. They'll really play it up. But maybe some won't. So maybe elements of this inflation that's argued is transitionary may remain. And what we're seeing is searches. Google Trends. Transitory has jumped up in the past 12 months here in Australia. Throughout all of Australia except the Northern Territory or Tasmania or ACT. Why? I guess the Tasmanians aren't worried about inflation or transitory inflation. Are you okay? I don't know why those locations aren't. Maybe there's just not enough of a search. Well, no, there is. There's not enough search data from those locations. So those of you in NZ, oh, no, not NZ. I mean, it's virtually part of the Federation. Those of you in NT, let us know what you think. So one thing I want to bring you to your attention is, before we go through this article, just from the latest minutes from the RBA and their decision. This is what they've decided. The board reaffirmed the existing policy settings, namely a target for the cash rate of 0.1%. So they're going to keep it there. And that means there's going to be more money created and pumped into housing. An interest rate of 0 on exchange settlement balances held by financial institutions at the bank. A target of around 0.1% yield on the 3-year Australian government bond. The purchase of an additional 100 billion of government bonds at the same rate of 5 billion per week following completion of the first bond purchase program of 100 billion. So there you go. Another $100 billion of bonds purchased by the RBA. The expanded term funding facility to support credit to businesses, particularly small and medium-sized businesses, with an interest rate on new drawings until the 30th of June 2021 of 0.1%. So they're locking all of these things in. We're not going to see the interest rate increase, everyone. We're not going to see it. I mean, will they even be able to increase the rate? So let's look at this article right here. So the RBA shrugs off inflation concerns. So they're not worried. Are you worried about it, guys? The Reserve Bank of Australia has dismissed rising inflation concerns in its June meeting minutes. The RBA seemingly shrugged off concerns about rising consumer prices, as well as concerns wages aren't growing at the pace it needs to keep up. Well, have they? The RBA are certainly not the experts when it comes to wage price growth, as you can see here. Is it really something that anyone is surprised about, guys? CommSec Chief Economist Craig James said the main concern at the moment is that the current lift in the price of many consumer goods is not temporary and will lead to higher interest rates. The preeminent focus at present is inflation. Given that the supermarket is being supported by extraordinarily stimulatory conditions, the risks should be uppermost in investors' minds, he said. But the RBA continues to deflect concerns about either higher prices or higher wages. RBA Governor Philip Lowe said in the June minutes, members noted that the strong focus on cost containment by businesses meant that it would take some time for spare capacity to be reduced and the labour market to be tight enough to generate wage increases consistent with achieving the inflation target. Now, the board are concerned with inflation targets because that's going to impact their ability to, that's going to influence if they will increase the cash rate, guys. So until they hit their inflation target, until this is the cash rate, until CPI jumps up, they're not going to move on this. They're not going to move on it. James pointed out that the RBA has said wages will need to grow at an annual rate of at least 3% before it considers raising interest rates, and at 1.5%, wages are currently well short of that goal. Certainly, the July RBA board meeting should be the most illuminating about rate hike views and timetables. At the meeting, the RBA will decide on the bond purchase strategy and the 3-year yield target. So watch this space, he said. Inflation concerns are rising. Concerns over rising inflation have been growing recently, as government stimulus measures around the world have helped to keep economies growing in the face of pandemic-induced lockdowns. Wages need to increase to keep pace with the rising costs of goods and services, but the RBA seemed to indicate a rise could be coming. Information from the bank's liaison program and other surveys indicated that labour shortages were appearing in some parts of the economy, Lowell said. The reduction in access to foreign labour and reduced interstate mobility were cited by some firms as contributing factors. However, the RBA said that despite more industries facing labour shortages, increasing wages is not something those businesses were looking to adopt to retain staff, but rather were offering flexible working arrangements. Some firms were also opting to ration outplace because of labour shortages, rather than pay higher wages to attract new workers, Lowe said. Well, that's what you do as a business when you're not confident exactly what's going to happen in the future. So what are the solutions and takeaways to all of this, everyone? I mean, are you worried about inflation or deflation? Do you invest in, a property, also known as Australian gold, or precious metals, or shares? Or do you just hoard cash because you think prices are going to drop? Or are you bulk buying food and materials now when it's cheaper if you're worried about inflation? It's all a whole lot of what ifs, isn't it? Let me know your suggestions in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching, everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and enjoy the content I create here, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. Support us using SelfWealth or Stake. Use our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. Buy a merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. You can also subscribe to HeiseSays on Odyssey and other alternative platforms. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.